Hey guys, it's Carly. Welcome back to Mostly Dating, a First Rounds on Media production. First Rounds on Me is an app you guys have heard me talk about for a while. The reason I love it is because so many apps are designed, they feel like they're designed to keep you in the app for longer, and First Rounds on Me is exactly the opposite. So it's inspired by a time when people actually met in real life, and it really forces you to get out there and go on dates. So you can get your first month of their premium subscription for free. Just use code MOSTLYDATING, and I'll put that link in the show notes, and I'll tell you a little bit more about the app later. But before we get into it, I just want to say I hope everybody had a great holiday. I can't believe we're recording the last episode of 2024 right now. So if you're listening when it's released, it is December 30th. We're heading into the new year. Obviously, everybody knows this. The new year, January, all that energy is the perfect time for all my single listeners to get out there and be dating more. So get on the apps, First Rounds on Me, Hinge, all of the apps that you know that I love. Get out there, meet more people, and that's going to be the energy right now, is just getting out in real life. So I also wanted to talk a little bit about things that I'm loving. You guys know that I love to go over this in the beginning of the episode, things that I'm trying, loving, whether it's a product, something new. For those of you who are new here, I am also, outside of what I do for the podcast, I also write for Mind Body Green. I write freelance and I review products for a living. So I talk all the time on here about how these things really go hand in hand. So health, wellness, relationships, all of those things are so much more in sync than you might realize. Like, if you think back to the time when you were feeling your best, like you were probably eating super healthy, you're probably moving your body a lot, you're probably just doing a lot of the things that make you feel good, and you were probably feeling more confident in your dating life or just like happier in your relationship. And the reason that I like to talk about that is because that is the reason why this podcast is called Mostly Dating, because I talk primarily about dating, but I like to talk about all of these other things as well. So all that's to say, one of my favorite things that I wanted to share that I tried recently was a workout studio in New York City. So I know a lot of my listeners are based in New York. If you are, you should definitely go check it out. It's called the Soto Method. It was founded by Hillary Hoffman, and she actually taught the class that I went to. So I went to a class on opening day, and it's down in kind of like Soho, Tribeca area. And she taught it. She was probably like 8.5 months pregnant when she taught this class. And so that's saying something when it comes to just like how impactful and how effective this class is, because she was able to do that. She was pregnant with twins and she was up there teaching the class. It was amazing. It's a combination of sculpting and cardio. So she kind of breaks it up into different body parts. So I think what SOTO stands for is 60 on, 10 on. So basically every single part of the class is a different body part that you're focusing on. So maybe the first part is legs. And so it'll start with 60 seconds of an isometric hold that you'll feel in your legs. And then you'll go into 10 different exercises. And then you do that similar format with the next body part. So the reason that I love it is because there's like no surprises. So I hate being in a workout class and you're like working out this one area and they're like, oh, 10 more reps. And then they're like, surprise, like 10 more. And it's like, I hate that. Or that's like 10 seconds left. Oh, you can probably do another 20. And it's like, I really, really don't like that format. So I love that she breaks it down in a way that you know what to expect, but it like seriously gets into those little muscles. So I was so sore the next day. The class flew by and I just felt so good. Like I felt physically strong, mentally strong. I was in a good mood the rest of the day. And it just like really inspired me to get out there and be doing more in-person classes, because usually I'm in my at-home workout routine. But I wanted to mention it on here because even if you're not in New York, you can actually take the same exact classes online. So you can head to their website. I'll put that in the show notes as well. And it's one of like my New Year's intentions to be doing more of that, like I said, in real life classes and just like trying different workouts, because if you've been here a while, you know I'm a big runner, but I'm trying to really expand that and do more strength training and Pilates and all of that. So I loved that. And I really love Hillary. She has the best energy, but I'm excited to go back and try other instructors. And then the other thing that I wanted to share is, you guys have probably seen me talk about this, and I'm definitely not the only one. My red light mask, I am obsessed with it. It is like the best thing that I've done for my skin. So I probably tried my first red light product like almost 3 years ago now. And it was the Solar Wave like wand thing. I still love that. But ever since I kind of like graduated from that and moved into the red light masks. And I've tried probably every single one you've heard of, because again, that is like one of the things that I do for my job. So I've tested like the the Solo Wave, they have a mask. I've tested higher dose, Theraface, and all of these different ones. And the Theraface and higher dose are definitely my favorite right now. Theraface is like a step above. It has more of the lights and is like a little bit stronger, but it's also obviously more expensive. So I think they're both great. But really what it does is like the reason that I love it, and like a lot of the products that I test are going to have like research behind them. This one does. It's like there's a ton of research supporting the fact that this wavelength of red light really, really improves your skin. So it helps promote collagen production, which of course helps with the reduction of wrinkles and fine lines and just like helps your skin look younger. I swear, since I started using it, my skin looks like younger and younger. And it's only good if you're consistent with it. So I always tell people when they're like, especially around Black Friday, there were a lot of sales and people were asking me like, is it worth it? Should I get one? It's only worth it if you're actually going to use it. So it's one of those things that like, if you buy it and it sits in your drawer, then no, you shouldn't have spent the $350 to like $500 on it. But if you're gonna use it, when I'm consistent, I notice a huge, huge difference. So I'm gonna link both of those, the higher dose and the Theraface, in the show notes. I have noticed that a lot of the ones that are like in the $350 range are pretty similar. So you can't really go wrong with those, but I would recommend going for one of these brands just because they're well known. I've tried them and I've really, really seen the results. All right, so I got a few requests to spend some time talking about how to tell if you're compatible with someone early on. And I do have a post on this, so I'm going to link this in the show notes, but I will go like a little bit deeper into it on here. I like you can only fit so much in an Instagram post, so I'll dive into some of these things. But I definitely validate this. I think that it's so hard to tell the difference between if you have like chemistry or a spark with somebody versus if you're actually compatible. And that's why a lot of people end up in like staying in this like situationship or dating situation for too long because they have like a super great spark or they're feeling like all that chemistry and they're not realizing that they're actually not compatible with this person. And I like probably the most common message I get is like, why am I getting into these like 6-week or 3-month relationships that aren't turning into anything? And I do think that like that is a lot of the reason why. And we've talked about this on here before, but some people just have natural chemistry. Like some people, like individual people have like a spark to them that they will bring to any date that they go on. And that chemistry or that spark that you're feeling with that person, they probably feel with like more than half of the people that they go out with, just because that's their personality. Like they're super charismatic and they just bring that energy. And so it is really, really helpful to kind of like get a little bit more in tune with those signs of compatibility because it's like a very different thing than chemistry. And chemistry can grow. Like it should be there a little bit early on, at least. I don't think it can grow from nothing, like I've said before. But compatibility is sort of like you either have it or you don't. So one of the things is you feel excited to share more about yourself. So I've been on a lot of dates, like back when I was dating with people where like I just like didn't even really want to open up about things and I was not like excited to be talking with them just because like I didn't feel like I was getting a strong response from them or I felt like we weren't really like connecting on that level. And then I've been on dates where it's like, wow, I feel like I could talk to this person for hours. Like I'm excited for them to get to know me. And on top of that, like I am excited to get to know them. Like I'm not just going through my list of first date, second date, third date questions because I like need to ask something. I'm asking actual like specific questions because I want to get to know them better. So you're genuinely curious about them. You feel like they're genuinely curious about you. That is a really big sign of compatibility. Another one is like you feel secure and comfortable when you're around them. So of course, like you can be nervous when you're on an early date. I think that's totally normal. And it does take a little bit of time for people to warm up sometimes, but you should feel like kind of at ease and you should feel comfortable being yourself. If you feel like it's easier to put on an act and act like the person that you think they want you to be or the person that you think they want to be on a date with, then there might not be a really strong compatibility there. But if you feel like, wow, I'm like feeling very at ease, I'm feeling natural, I'm like acting like myself, I don't feel like I have to put on a show, that's a really good sign as well. And then my favorite one is you feel like you're on the same wavelength as them. So you can relate to certain little aspects of their life or the stories that they tell, or just like little random things about them. So my sister and I used to call this like same page. Like we would ask after we went on a date, like, oh, but were they same page? Because it's like this feeling that you can't really describe, but it's like you say say you're a very sarcastic person and you say something super sarcastic that usually only like your friends or people you're close with would understand, but they like throw it right back at you, that's like they're on the same page as you. Or like you feel like you get excited about some like random strange topic that someone else might kind of just like toss to the side and not want to dive into, but they're like super into diving into it. Or you find out that you both like, I don't know, had a similar experience growing up, or you don't. And like this, there, a huge distinction with this is that it doesn't have to mean you're from like the same background or you have the exact same family life or like everything about you and your interests are all similar. It's more about just like your vibes match. You're on that same wavelength. And that is like, that's compatibility. So that kind of like wraps up all of them. But that is something that like, I think once you feel it, you'll be like, oh, wow, okay, yes, this is like same page. Another one is you want similar things out of life and you have similar visions for the future. So it's also important here to note that, like, again, this does not mean you have like the exact same dream job or you want the exact same, like, just everything. You do not have to have the exact same interests or the exact same goals. Like I would argue that you probably shouldn't. Like you want to have a few different interests, and it's fine if you work in like different fields. Obviously, I think a lot of times that's better because you really like teach each other things about what you're interested in, and you have like that separate passion. But when you picture your life with this person, and of course, you're probably like thinking about this in really early dates. So it might sound crazy to picture this. I'm not saying like start dreaming up your future or your wedding with them, but like just take a second and like picture as you start going on more dates with this person. What if I was to date them for a year? What if I dated them for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? Not like romanticizing it or fantasizing about it, but would they want a similar life to what I want? So it's like all the basic things of, do they want to get married? Do they want to have kids? And all of that, of course, is obvious. But what about like, what do they want their life to look like when they're retired? What kind of like home do they want to live in? What place do they want to live in? Do they want to live more in like a city environment or a suburban environment? Those are the types of things that when you think about your future, if it's not aligned, and of course this changes for different ages, maybe you're not dating with like the intention to get married really soon, but I just think that future visions being aligned on some level to that degree is super, super important for compatibility. And it is one thing that it's so easy to ignore and kind of just toss to the side and think, oh, we'll figure it out when we get there. But those big things that I mentioned are like big things. And that's something that you want to make sure that you really are on the same page about. Another one that might be controversial is you should be attracted to them from the start. So I cannot tell you the number of messages I get or friends I get asking me, I'm not attracted to them. We've been on 6 dates. They're so great on paper. Should I keep going out with them? And it's like, I know there's such an overload of advice that like, oh, it grows. And even I just said a couple minutes ago, it does grow. Like, but it has to grow from somewhere. You have to be attracted to them on some level. And the only scenario that I feel like this can change in is if, like, say you work with somebody or you're friends with someone and suddenly you're attracted to them and you never felt like you were before. Like, it can, of course, like grow or like kind of like manifest into something like that over like a long period of time of really getting to know somebody. But I don't think that that's enough to gamble on if you have literally zero attraction to this person to keep going out with them just because they're great on paper. So I think attraction is important, and there should be some type of physical connection or physical chemistry on early dates. It doesn't have to be huge. It can definitely build, and there are ways to build it, which I've talked about a lot in here before, but there needs to be some type of seed there. And then you can easily picture them fitting in with other people in your life. This one is huge because if you're thinking, of course, like you're the person dating this person, you don't need everyone in your life to get along and be best friends with them. But I think it's one really like kind of simple way of judging whether you'll be compatible with this person is thinking about like, would they fit in with people that you are super compatible with? So if you think about the people that you spend the most time with, you think about like your family, your friends, all the people that you're like naturally around and that you feel comfortable with. And then you picture this person that you've been on like 4 or 5 dates with being like in that mix. And it feels like they really like stand out like a lot, or they just like wouldn't get along with them, or there's like something that's like again, they can be like different in certain ways, but if it just seems like they wouldn't get along with them at all or they wouldn't fit in at all, then it's kind of like, oh, are we super compatible? And And again, this is like important to different people. So if you feel like, no, I don't care if they get along with my friends or family, then like that's you, whatever. If you want to go with that, that's fine. But I think that that's just kind of like a little trick to see if you'll be compatible with them. Is like, oh, where would they fit into like what I do now in my life now? And then one thing that like I feel like has come up on every episode is you should have a similar mindset about money. So it doesn't mean you have to have the same amount of money or like that you make the same money or like you're in like the same exact like money bracket. It doesn't mean that, but a similar mindset around the types of things you like to spend on, the types of things that you save on, and just like even the types of dates you want to go on and the way you like to travel, like things like that. Like if one of you loves to go on like lavish trips and like wants to split everything evenly and you feel like that, no, I don't want to be spending my money on that. Like those are all conversations you can have, but I think they're little clues to that early on in dating that you could be like, oh, we might not be like super compatible from a money standpoint. If everything else is amazing and you feel like that's something you can work through, then it is. Like all of these things, a lot of these things are things that you can like talk about and work through, but it's just something to really be mindful of as you're early on in dating because it is such like a triggering topic. I recently did a post that I can link as well of just conversations that you should have about money early on in a relationship and really like continue to have throughout the relationship because the sooner like everything, like money, sex, all of those things, like even defining the relationship, like what's happening with the relationship, what you want, all of those things get even more difficult to talk about the further along you get into a relationship if you haven't talked about it at all. So if you are not comfortable talking about money early on, you're not going to be comfortable talking about it in like 6 months, 12 months, 2 years because it wasn't a part of your relationship and something that's like outside of your comfort zone, like doesn't get easier unless you do it. So the earlier on you can start weaving that in, the better. And I'm not saying like ask them how much money they make on the first date, but just get comfortable talking about these types of topics. All right, I'm going to take a quick break to tell you guys a little bit more about First Rounds on Me. So we can talk about dating all day, but at some point we need to actually go on a date. And First Rounds on Me makes this whole transition from chatting on the apps to going out in real life so much more approachable. So they have a limited 24-hour chat, which means once you match with someone on the app, you literally only have 24 hours to plan a date with them. And that really cuts back on the back and forth and cuts back on the pen pal stage, which I know I was a victim to a lot and probably in my own doing. So if you're spending time just chatting and texting on an app and you're not going on real dates, this app like seriously answers that. They take care of all of the planning too, so you don't have to overthink anything about planning the date. And another cool thing about it is you only get one match per day. So there's no overload. There's no like 50 matches sitting in your box. You don't know who to message. It really makes everything so simple and so intentional, which is one of the biggest things that I talk about on here. And the whole process just becomes so much smoother. So say goodbye to swiping left and hello to real connections. First Rounds on Me helps you skip the awkward stages and find meaningful matches. And you can get a free month of their Terracotta Premium subscription with the code MOSTLYDATING. And that link is in my show notes, as I said earlier. All right, I'm going to head into some listener questions for the second half of this episode. This first person said, seeing a guy for only a few weeks, how to tell your family without getting their hopes up, but to avoid, are you single? Okay, so this question, I'm assuming, came in when I was taking in a lot of questions about the holidays. So if this person is listening and they already got all the are you single questions over the holidays, I'm sorry. But I think this could be really helpful because I know a lot of people deal with this. I've said this on here a lot, but I was the single person in my family for so long, like so long. I have 4 sisters, a stepsister and a stepbrother. They are all married and they all have kids. And every time I would go home, I wouldn't get the are you single questions. Like my family isn't really like that. So I definitely feel for people who get those questions. But I did get like a couple, like everyone, all they ask you when you're single is like, are you dating anybody? So it's like a different version of why are you single? I think that it's like a more polite way to say it, but it's something you have to give an answer to and it's stressful. And I was definitely in situations where it's like, oh, well, I have been on 2-3 dates with somebody, but like, do I tell them that? I don't want to tell them. And then like, by the time I talk to them next, I'm not even seeing that person anymore. I kind of kept a lot of that stuff to myself. I am being a twin, like my twin sister is my best friend. So I would tell her everything, but outside of her, I wouldn't be telling everybody in my family if I went on a couple dates with somebody, especially like, it seems like you're probably excited about this person. I just think that like talking it up when you don't know where it's going could kind of lead to you building it up in your head before you even know how you feel about this person or how they feel about you. So I think that get clear on like if you're wanting to tell them because you want to prove something to them, like, oh no, I'm not fully single, I've been on a couple dates with this person, then I don't think it's worth telling them. But if you feel like sharing it and you're excited to talk about it and you feel like comfortable with telling this person who's asking you about being single, then you could tell them. But I'd probably just keep it simple, like, oh, I've actually been on a couple dates with somebody recently who seems really cool, but we're still getting to know each other. And that's kind of like, it kind of gives them the like understanding that you're not just sitting at home not dating anybody, which is fine if you choose to do that as well. But you are out there dating somebody, you're excited about it, but you're like really implying that you're not sure where it's going, and kind of like closes the door for follow-up questions. If they do ask follow-up questions, just say like kind of like hit it home, like I really don't know like where it's going, or I don't know them too well. I'm just like excited to see where it goes. And then hopefully that ends the conversation there. Okay, this next person says, after only matching and texting, is it too much to show up at a New Year's Eve party with flowers or a small gift as a surprise? All right, so this is the 30th of December if you're listening the day of, so hopefully you're listening to this in time. I would not bring flowers or a small gift, but I would like, you could ask them to do something on New Year's Eve. I got a similar question that I answered a few weeks ago on Instagram. Somebody was asking like, oh, we've been on one date. Is it too soon to ask them to come to New Year's Eve plans? And no, I don't think it's not, you're not asking them to come home to meet your family for the holidays. Like going to New Year's Eve plans is kind of just like inviting them to any plans. And I honestly think you can do that at any point, as long as it's not like kind of clouding up the judgment of where the dating situation or relationship is heading. I think if it's just like fun, they don't have plans, you have plans, it's like a fun party, then you can invite them to it. But showing up, it sounds like you guys have matched and texted, and it sounds like you're going to the same New Year's Eve party. Showing up with flowers or a surprise gift is a definite no. Like I would not do that at all. I mean, it would be one thing if you and this person were going on, I actually have a good example of this. So if you and this person were going on a first date, you had matched and texted, you're going on a first date and it was like their birthday or something, and you wanted to bring them a small like gift or some type of like flowers or something, that could be cute. I did have somebody ask about that recently as well. And it's like, yeah, sure, bring a flower. Like I wouldn't bring anything lavish, but if you want to bring like chocolates or a flower and say like, oh, happy birthday, that's fine. But even that could be a turnoff for somebody who's maybe more avoidant. Like I'm coming at this from as somebody who always was more avoidant and sometimes still is. I had somebody do this to me not do this to me, but I guess for me, when I was out there dating. This was probably like 8+ years ago. And I was going on a first date with somebody who I actually knew like kind of I didn't know them super well, but it was not a dating app. It was somebody that I met in real life and who knew a lot of my friends and worked in a similar industry. So it was not like a total stranger. And he knew that it had been my birthday a couple days before. And so he brought a cupcake. And like on some level, I knew it was really cute, but on some level, I was like really weirded out. It felt like too much. And like a lot of women or men, like I'm sure a lot of people would be like, oh my God, that's so cute. And if it was the right person, and also like if it was the right person for me and I was into him, like I might have thought it was a lot cuter, but it just kind of like seemed like not even love bomby, just like too much for me. Like I was, again, avoidant and not really wanting, like it was just too much. And so I think that especially when you're surrounded by a lot of people at a party, it's just like, and like, where do they put the flowers? Like, where do they put the small gift? I don't know. I would say no to this. Okay, this person says, tips for FaceTime dates. Do you think it's as telling as in person for seeing if there's a vibe? I don't like FaceTime dates. I understand where they came from during COVID and lockdown and all of that. And I think that during that time, I was like strongly recommending it because it's like you're going out. Do you want to go out with somebody where you're going to have to like sit outside in the freezing cold on a first date when you don't even know if you have like any connection at all? And so I do think a FaceTime date is somewhat helpful to feeling that connection. But right now, I'm just like, I don't know. I'm just all about getting out in person, meeting someone in real life, feeling that vibe. I think it is like easier and faster to feel a vibe in person. And I think it's highly possible that you might not feel a vibe on FaceTime, but then you do in real life. So while it's like kind of an effective screening process, I just don't see the point of it. And I do understand, trust me, like as a woman and somebody who was out there dating a lot, like for a lot of years before being in a relationship, in my current relationship, I understand that it's like, sometimes you just don't want to go on a date and you don't want to get ready and do your makeup and pick out your outfit and even like tell your friends you're going on a date and get all excited about it and then go out and you just have zero connection. So I understand the desire to have that FaceTime date to really kind of like see and weed people out, but it's just not worth it. It's not worth it. If anything, just like go on less dates, go on, maybe you're going on like 3 dates a week right now, go on 1 date a week if it feels like you're getting burnt out or overwhelmed by all of this dating, and try to feel the vibe over the messages or through their profile. Like get a little bit more selective about the people you're going out with, or like try going out with different types of people. And maybe that will help you get a better feel for like what you're looking for on an app. And I just think it's like a lot more effective, and FaceTime dates just like, I don't know, they're kind of just awkward unless you like have like, oh yeah, I have like 15 minutes to chat before I have like plans, and you have like a specific end to it, then that could be fine. But either way, I just think take the chance, go out in real life. I think if you're feeling like super skeptical about a person, so much so that you feel like you need to screen them over FaceTime, then maybe not the person. But I would just say like, make this the year that you take more chances on going out and meeting people in real life. You can end it early if it's not going well. You don't have to go on a date with them where you go to like 6 places or stay out for 3 hours. You can stay out for like 45 minutes, grab a coffee, go for a walk, get one drink. Like just go out on more in-person dates. What steps to take if your partner says things are starting to get boring? Okay, I mean, I would be very annoyed by this. I think I'm going to kind of save this topic for next week, because next week I'm going to be talking about how to reignite a spark in a relationship, like how to keep dating your partner and stay in that honeymoon phase and really like keep the excitement alive. Again, it ebbs and flows, but I have a lot of tips for how to do that. I think that that's kind of like a separate thing, because here I think the issue is the fact that he said this like in a very rude way. Like that would bother me. And so I think this takes like a more of a conversation. I think if like somebody had lightly said like, oh, we should go out more, or like, oh, I feel like we're doing a lot of the same thing. Like if he said this like kind of more nicely, and I'm saying he, I don't know if this was a man or a woman, but if they said this more nicely and it was like, or it was like a subtle hint was dropped and you just were, or even you were feeling like the spark was fading, or you were feeling like you wanted to spice things up, then that's when you start like implementing things that I'll talk about next week. But if he's literally told you things are getting boring with your relationship, then it seems like a conversation you guys need to have. So I would like bring that up and ask him like, how long has he been feeling that way? And also first think about, do you feel that way? Like, do you think that it's been getting boring? I think just be really honest about how you're feeling and then have that conversation with him. This person says, is it silly to care if my boyfriend of 8 months won't put me in his Facebook profile pic? His ex was in it. I don't think, I mean, again, like I said last week, it's, if you feel a certain way, it's not silly to feel that way. It's like you feel that way. So just like accept that that's how you feel. So I can't tell you how you should or shouldn't feel, but I do think that this is sort of like splitting hairs. Like it's a Facebook profile picture. I don't really think it's that important at all. And I this is one of those things that I genuinely don't think that you should compare to his past relationship. Like, I don't know, maybe he was like maybe he interacted with Facebook differently when he was with his ex. Like maybe he used it more and he was updating his profile picture a lot. And now he just kind of like, after they broke up, he changed it to a picture of just him, and he like hasn't changed it since then. It's not that big of a deal. It's like not something deep. Or maybe it is something deep, and maybe he felt really embarrassed when he had her in his profile picture and then he had to take it down when they broke up, and he just doesn't want that to happen again. So whatever it is, I don't think it's worth reading into. I would honestly just like take this out of your mind. I think it's similar. It's honestly even on a much smaller level than people who ask if it's weird that they haven't posted them at all on their page. And that I would say like, okay, like if they're posting a ton and they just aren't posting you, but they used to post their ex a lot, then I could see that being a conversation. I would honestly recommend that being a conversation, and I would be like a little bit weirded out about it. But a profile picture, like just, I don't know. I don't think that's that big of a deal. How should I feel? Oh, I'm going to skip that one. Okay, this one This one got a lot of responses when I posted it on Instagram. So I'm going to share what a few people said. This person says, fiance cheated on me a year before we got engaged. Our wedding is in June. What do I do? I did answer this on Instagram, but I wanted to talk about it in more like at length because again, I got a lot of responses and this is a super, super difficult situation. So first of all, I'm so sorry that you're dealing with this. I cannot imagine. And so how I'm understanding this, because I literally only got those words, I don't have any more details, is you are just finding out now. So I'm getting this question in December and you said your wedding is in June and he cheated on you a year before you got engaged. I'm not sure when you got engaged, but it sounds like he cheated on you at least a year ago, if not more. And now you have your wedding coming up in about like 6-7 months and you're trying to decide what to do. So finding out somebody cheated on you in general, no matter what the circumstances are, it's like heartbreaking and it's like they broke your trust. And it's just, I have been cheated on before, like years ago in like a college relationship. So definitely not as serious as this, but either way, it hurts so much. And I totally understand that. So I'm very, very sorry. And then combining that with the fact that you have a wedding coming up and it's just I understand you not knowing what to do. All that's to say, like I genuinely cannot tell you what to do. I can say what I think I might do, but even that is like, this is one of those things that you don't know what you would do unless you're in that situation. So I was thinking about this a lot before I answered this on Instagram, and I would absolutely cancel the wedding. I don't know for sure that I would end the relationship yet. It really, again, depends on the scenario and what's going on in that relationship, how I feel about it in general. Like, did this come as a total and complete shock and everything felt perfect to you? Or have you guys had issues? So many things to consider. But having the wedding in the equation, especially like on the horizon 6 months from now, I think 6 months before a wedding is when you are starting to like really finalize a lot of those details. I don't know anything about like wedding planning when it comes to like when payments are due and stuff like that, but it doesn't matter. Even if you're going to lose some money, I do not think it's worth keeping this wedding on the calendar and just having that like looming. It's like you don't want to have, first of all, you don't want to have that energy around your wedding, that it just feels like something that's like looming in the background and like, are we going to make it to that or are we not? I think taking it out of the equation, and this is a big if you do want to work on the relationship, I honestly think you're only going to be able to do it if the wedding is just like on the back burner for now. And I know that sucks and that hurts. And I'm sure like this is, again, like an incredibly difficult decision to make. But that's what I would do. And then when it comes to how to work through it, assuming that you do, or if you do postpone the wedding, I think that a lot of people recommended couples counseling. I think premarital counseling is like an amazing idea either way. And I know we get a lot of mixed opinions on this in terms of if it's a bad sign, if you have to have therapy before you're even married or before you even have kids, couples therapy, it's like a very polarizing topic. And I honestly think it could be a really good thing. I'm saying this as someone who I have not been to couples therapy yet, but I would fully plan on doing it before getting married. I think that you see even on my Instagram, I do a lot of posts on conversations to have before getting engaged, conversations to have before getting married. And a lot of those conversations are extremely difficult to have, like difficult to even ask those questions. And I think having somebody else in the room, the therapist or counselor, or whoever you decide to talk to, is like a neutral third party that will help you work through these things. And so that's just like premarital counseling in general, I think is a good thing. But when you're actually dealing with an issue like this, like broken trust, that is a huge thing. And who wants to head into a marriage not knowing if you trust somebody? I think that's just like, it's not possible. And I would say, honestly, like the bulk of the messages that I got, probably at least like 10, 15 responses I got to this were from people who had this happen to them, something very similar, where during the engagement period, they found out that their fiance had cheated on them in the past and they decided to still get married. And then 10 months, a year, 3 years, like somebody said like 10 years later, they ended the relationship. And it was because like all of coming down to trust. And I'm not saying that would definitely happen to you, but it's like when I get all those messages, I'm like, yeah, I'm honestly not surprised, because for the people who did decide to move forward with the wedding, again, that's looming on the calendar. And it's like you kind of have a deadline of when you guys have to work through this. If you have that date on the calendar, it's like, okay, well, we got to figure this out. I have to trust him again by the time it's June because that's when I'm getting married. And that's just not realistic. And so I think then what ends up happening is you end up pushing it into the back of your mind, getting married. It's like your wedding day. So it's probably an amazing day. And then you just like head into the honeymoon phase and like kind of forget about it or just pretend that you forgot about it. And I don't think that that is productive or helpful at all. And so I think that like taking that out of the equation and really trying to work on it. I'm going to read a couple of the responses that I did get from some people. Somebody said, this actually happened to me, except it was 10 months before our wedding. I went ahead and married him, split up a year and a half after the wedding, and he had been cheating the whole time. I'm currently 14 weeks post breakup, and it's really hard. So I think no matter when, if you decide to end this relationship, no matter when you end it, it will be really hard. But think about how much harder it will be if you just kind of like power through and go through with this wedding and then you have to deal with it later. Another person said, this happened to me as well. I postponed the wedding, tried to make it work. I couldn't. It was terrible because in my head, I wanted it to work out, but in my heart and gut, I wasn't able to. So I ended the relationship. It was the best thing I ever did for myself. Hopefully this person is able to get through this. So somebody from a different side of it who made the tough decision and now they're happy that they did. One last one. This person said something similar. Sending my condolences to this person. I found out 7 months before our wedding date that my ex-fiance had been cheating for the last 4 months. Absolutely shattered my trust, and it was hard to let go of the future I dreamed we had. Once I processed my emotions, it was crystal clear the best thing was for me to end the relationship. So I'm not telling when I answered this question, and I don't mean to laugh, but when I answered this question on Instagram, my boyfriend later in the day was like, whoa, you gave some really deep advice on Instagram. You told somebody to end their marriage. And I'm like, well, I didn't tell them to end the engagement. I just was saying what I would do. And again, I just want to stress that like you are the only one that knows what's right for you. I just am here to give like a little bit of perspective from somebody who, again, only knows these 2 sentences that you gave me about your relationship. That is what I think I would do if I put myself in that situation. And that this is what a lot of people said. So I think try to work through it, do the couples counseling thing and like kind of take it from there. But I would not suggest keeping the wedding date because I think that's just like an added stress. All right, I'm going to end with one more longer question from a listener. Hello, love your page. Wondering if you have time for advice. I've gone out on 3 dates with this guy and I would guess another one is coming. But also when I first met him, I had mentioned divorce paperwork. I didn't tell him really where I was in the stage of it. It was supposed to go in front of a judge yesterday originally, so I wasn't worried about specifics. But my ex asked if I would delay it a little bit so that we can stay legally married so we can use my health insurance. So I'm delaying it until the first week of February. My question is, do you think it's something I should share with this new person at this point? To me, it's not a big deal because we're signed and filed and just waiting for the judge to sign off. But like maybe a person would feel that's dishonest that I didn't disclose that I'm not legally divorced for a couple more months. Okay. I actually thought about this one a lot because I couldn't decide what I would do. Ultimately, I think like you mentioned the divorce paperwork. He knows you're going through divorce. If you didn't tell him a specific date it was happening, I don't think you need to necessarily update him every step along the way. Like, oh, by the way, so-and-so asked me to delay things so he can use my insurance. Now I'm going to like be divorced in this month. I think that unless he asked you, are you legally divorced? And you said yes. And now you need to like, you're wondering if you have to dial back and tell him like, oh, sorry, actually, I delayed it 2 months. Like if he's getting into those nitty gritty details with you and he seems like very like, attached to like a specific timeline of when your divorce is, then that might be a conversation to have. But otherwise, I think this is ultimately your business. He knows you're going through a divorce. I don't think that the specific timelines are necessarily super important. But one big caveat of that is if you feel like it is, like if you feel like you're hiding something or you feel uncomfortable in this relationship or in this like new dating stage because there's like something that you don't feel like you're being fully honest about, then I think that might just like, that's going to cause you more stress. So I think you could casually, again, I would not get into the details. It just like, it doesn't really pertain to the situation. It's not like you're not getting divorced for another 2 years. Like it's 2 months, but you could casually say like, oh, my divorce papers are going to be signed in February or something like that, I wouldn't tell him like, oh, it's because of the health insurance or anything like that. But you could casually mention that. And then it's like, okay, that's off your conscience and you don't need to worry about if it's like misleading or if like I don't know, if he thinks something different. And I don't think that this will be a deal breaker for anybody. If he was okay with the fact that you're going through a divorce, I don't think he's going to mind if it's in December or February. So it's up to you. If you feel like uncomfortable as if you're hiding something, then you could say something. I'm going to do one more actually. So this one's a quick, easy one. What's a good reply when their app opener is hi there? So this ties into just what you should say on apps in general, and it's definitely not hi there. But that doesn't mean that if somebody says this to you or they just say, hey, how's it going, or something super boring that I would never recommend, if they say that, it doesn't mean you shouldn't say anything to them. I've told this story in here 100 times, but the first message from my boyfriend on the dating app was like something like dumb. Like it was like, I don't remember what it was, but it was just like, it was like 2 words, and it was not, sorry, Sean, for saying it was dumb, but it was nothing, there was nothing to go off of. But normally I would have like not said anything to him, but I accepted it and like we matched. And then he said like, how many marathons have you run? And said something about my profile. And so I felt like, okay, like now he is actually like leading into a conversation. And I think that is like, of course, the ideal situation. I think if you see something on their profile that you feel like you connect with or you're interested in them, I don't think that them not having an amazing opener is a deal breaker. It definitely shouldn't be. But I do think like and of course that like this worked out for me, but if I were to go back, I would give myself the advice that I shouldn't have just like matched and like let it sit there and waited to see if he said something. I think he said something like pretty soon after. But I think if you're going to accept a match from somebody who just said, hey, or just said, how's it going? Again, don't fault them for that. People are not like studying how to use dating apps correctly. And it's like, it's fine. I've sent a lot of, hey, how's it going as well. But the best thing you can do to like move things forward quickly is say whatever you would say if you had been the one opening the conversation. So don't just say, hey, look at their profile and say something unique to their profile. That is the best dating app opener. And you are treating this as an opener because they haven't given you anything to work with. So look at their profile. I recommend I don't think you should compliment their appearance or say something about like their pictures necessarily unless it's like something, again, unique. But I think the best thing that you can do is look at maybe one of their prompts, or it could be like something in their photo. If they traveled somewhere that you're interested in, if they, again, like my example, if I had a photo on my profile of me running a marathon, or I might have had a prompt that said I wanted to run all of the world major marathons. And so asking me about marathons is something I could talk about forever. Clearly because it was on my profile. And so it was easy for me to answer, and the conversation picked up from there. So I think if somebody has a good profile, they have things on there that are like little nuggets of information about them that are like just little thought starters of how you can begin a conversation and how you can like kind of get things going there. So if they have on there a food that they like, ask them like, oh, what's the best, I don't know, tacos in XYZ city, wherever you are. Or if they have, again, somewhere they traveled, ask them what's next on their travel list. I think asking a question and something that's like a little more open-ended, so not just a yes or no question, is the best way to start a conversation. So that's definitely what I would do. I also do offer profile consultations, dating app profile makeovers. So if anybody is interested in that, I'll put that link in the show notes as well. I'm going to end it here. I hope everybody enjoys the last 2 days of 2024 and you have a great new year. Thank you so much for listening. I put a link in the show notes if you want to have your question answered on the podcast. I have a new form you can fill out so you can give a lot more details than what fits in the Instagram question box. So that will lead to longer questions on the podcast and might change up the format a little bit, but I'm super excited about it. And if you are enjoying the podcast, please leave a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts. It just helps so much get the word out and bring in new listeners, which is one thing I'm super grateful for this year. Thank you for listening. I will talk to you all next week.